Hey everyone, Alon Mizrahi here. This is the Mizrahi perspective. And today the Mizrahi perspective is going to be a little bit philosophical or maybe even spiritual. God forbid. Not spiritual in a religious or new age way. This is something I don't do. Spiritual in a true and maybe pure sense. I think that we lack this kind of conversation and we desperately need it. We desperately need it. We are waging a cultural, moral, psychological, emotional, spiritual war. But we are trying to wage it while always discussing what's happening at a certain moment. This event or that event, that statement or that agreement, and all those small, endless things that happen in reality. And our consciousness is always caught up in those events. But I think it can't make sense of them if we don't nourish it, if we don't nourish ourselves with a more principled, a more philosophical. And we shouldn't be afraid of this. This will give us strength. We cannot wage this war without having the philosophy and the vocabulary of waging a seriously grand political war, which is also emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual. Because listen, this is not Israel doing this and the US doing that, and Trump is saying this and all this stuff that I follow. But it is never the main thing for me. As you already know from watching a couple of my videos, I talk about the big story. And today I'm going to talk about the even bigger story. The even bigger story. I'm going to share my philosophy, not only of resistance, but my outlook on life and how I look at it. And I want to offer you this outlook to make us stronger in our resistance and more resilient and more difficult to confuse and distract. And as I started saying, this is not just what Trump is saying and what the US is doing and what Israel is doing. It is not even only the tremendous pain and suffering and humiliation and tragedy coming out of Gaza. We are fighting a war, and I want everyone to listen carefully to this. We are fighting a war against people who are trying to normalize the mass murder of children. And they not only try to normalize the mass murder of children, they're trying to also normalize a fake discourse which is based in false morality and false justice to supposedly support the mass killing and mass murder of children with some kind of moral language. This is what we are up against. And on top of all this, there's all the tyranny, all the technological surveillance, all the stuff that humans always faced. Okay? So in order to be able to function in this, to remain sharp, to remain focused, we have to keep our mind we have to keep our mind and our hearts on the bigger story. And I use this background today because the 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 rhetorical means I want to use is that of yin and yang, meaning things can stand for two opposites at the same time. And I'm not going to remain in the realm of philosophy and just abstract truth. Specifically, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states can be the biggest catastrophe for Palestine. The parties, the groups that abandon them in the most heartbreaking and catastrophic ways, but they can also be the Palestinians' greatest saviors at the same time. At the same time. And I think that what I see from people who share my pain, and we're all in this together. Okay, we're all in this together. I'm seeing too many people who are only seeing and only experiencing the pain and grief and sorrow. And this has become their main or their exclusive perspective on events. And this is bad and this is wrong. This is not resistance. Always saying how bad you feel and how terrible reality is and how much of a catastrophe and a shame something is, it is true. But it can't be the complete mental state that you're in, because the mission that we have is to fight this war, to be in this spiritual, cultural, emotional, social war for a better world, for a better society, for a cultural landscape where people can be moral, can be wise, which is impossible now because they are forcing upon us the mass killing of children, but also this fake debate. I'm being spiritual and philosophical today. I told you from the start. But I think you need to hear this and I need to say it because this is a big part of who I am. And I always wanna bring out what's in me. And I can see this tendency to only see things from the perspective, and I'm going to say some things about this, and they're not going to be all nice, but this is what I do. I won't always say nice things. I see this tendency when I try to point to what I see as positive signs, there is a huge reaction. Some people get it. I mean, many people get it, but there's an almost overwhelming reaction of, but all the deaths in Gaza and the people are still dying and Israel is murdering them. Now, we know this. We know this. We know this. No one misses that. But when this becomes a soul perspective, a soul experience, we are not helping the cause. We are not fighting. And society and culture, the culture that we live in, has programmed us to think that the use of social media is to tell each other how bad we feel about stuff. But this is not what we're supposed to be doing. We are fighting a war. And if I want one message to come out of this video, I want every one of us, every one of you, to have this mentality. We are warriors. We are fighting a war. We are fighting a war. This is a war. This is how I see it. I made this huge change in my life, leaving a country with a little girl, with a family, with all super complex. I did it because I see myself as a fighter in this war. I am not just opining. I am not just expressing pain and grief. I am creating a different consciousness. I'm creating a different landscape. I'm opening up new possibilities. This is what I want to do out of my sense of mission, out of my sense of duty and responsibility, and not because I'm this important, because all of us need to have this kind of mentality. We cannot leave this world at the hand of psychopaths and sadists. And if we don't do something, if we don't fight for what's right, they are going to have absolute control. And we are not fighting them by sharing how terrible we feel. We have to see the bigger picture. And because I mentioned Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, and now this is the main thing that's happening. Trump is in doing all his crazy stuff in Saudi Arabia. This man is unbelievable, really. And this is a good chance. And I'm going to talk about three things that fit this pattern that I speak about. The yin and yang, being two things, the two opposite things at the same time. And those are the things that make me feel hopeful, that make me feel hopeful. And I hope I can transfer this hopefulness to you. We can't be in despair. We can't be with our heads down. We can't be there. This is not fighting. There's time to grieve, and we need to, and we have to, or else we're going to go crazy. But there's a lot other stuff that we need to do, and we need to be in a different mental state. But I want to talk about what Saudi Arabia is doing, because I'm not going to stay in the realm of just philosophy and just this kind of talk. Saudi Arabia, I'm going to talk about Saudi Arabia, and it represents other Gulf states. Okay, so I'm going to say Saudi Arabia, but it's also true for the UAE and Qatar, each with its own nuances, but it's true for all of them. And it's true for the Arab world, basically. They have made some very concrete statements. They have taken some actions which should give all of us a lot of hope. And this doesn't take anything. As I said, two things are right at the same time. This doesn't take anything from the criticism, the fierce and just criticism that we should address, and many do address at them. But at the same time, for the past months, since Netanyahu was in Washington and this stupid idea of ethnic cleansing was openly discussed, the entire Arab League, the entire Arab world has completely rejected this plan. And they stood their ground. They didn't fold. Netanyahu said just yesterday, we want the ethnic cleansing, but the only problem we have is finding countries that are going to accept the people. And he's not going to find any country because the opposition to Israel is growing, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. And we have to appreciate how huge this is, because if they had folded, Palestine would have been done with. That would have been it. But they said no. And they say no, especially Saudi Arabia, which is the biggest, richest, most powerful regime. They say no to normalization with Israel without a Palestinian state. And this is a brilliant, brilliant step. This is a brilliant step. They know this is something that Israel cannot give and will not be able to give. And this is the best way to break Israel. This is going to break Israel because this is so normal and simple. This is not complex. This is simple but genius. This is brilliant. This is a simple demand that anyone can get. Why they're making it, okay? And at the same time, it is something Israel cannot give and cannot accept. And this makes Israel look the party that won't compromise. The problem, not only to the eyes of the Arab world, but to the eyes of Washington in Europe and the whole international community. By demanding something this simple and elegant, Saudi Arabia is going to break Israel without having to fight a war. And when we criticize and when we talk about the Gulf states, we have to remember those regimes are not the most stable. These are not authentic countries and regimes like Malaysia or Italy or France or China. These are regimes that no one was elected there, that they don't get their legitimacy from the people. They are some kind of, maybe made up, maybe not, nobility, monarchy, created in alliance with Western powers. They have to maintain such a delicate equilibrium, not only with their own populations, but also with Washington and Israel, and now also China. And this is something that is very difficult to do. And this is the situation. I'm not saying this is the best outcome. This is what should be the reality. Nevertheless, this is the reality. They have to navigate all those difficult situations with their own populations, with the US and the West, but also with China and Russia, and the prices of oil and all this mechanism. So by maintaining good ties with the US, but also finding a way to make a demand that is very simple and intuitively understandable to everyone who watches this, like conditioning normalization on the establishment of Palestine. The Saudis are making a brilliant step. And I can understand why they're doing this. with all this delicate equilibrium that I'm describing, they are not suicidal. They are not suicidal. They cannot do something which will be seen as complete surrender, because this will make any claim that they have to independence and legitimacy, it will make it ridiculous. If they become formal partner in the destruction of Palestine, which is very symbolic for Arabs, then they can't have any claim that they represent anything authentic, and they can't do it. And there's a very good chance that this festival, this crazy festival that everyone knows is crazy, this Trump festival with the billions and the ceremonies and the insane speeches, all this nonsense that's going on, it may very well be that they are doing this to bring the US over to their side and convince the US to not go to war with Iran. And this is the political reason why they're doing it. And as if they cause the US to not go to war with Iran, to abandon this line of thinking and sign an agreement with Iran, this is also a brilliant way to contain Israel. Because if war with Iran is off the table, then the only problematic factor in the Middle East remains Israel and its occupation and its genocide and all the problems it has caused for others and for itself. So if this is the calculus for the Saudis, for the Gulf states, the biggest strategic calculus, I'm telling you, this is not just about airplanes and billions. They wouldn't do this for all this nonsense. They have a bigger goal. And the fact that they never agreed to surrender to the Israeli onslaught, they never agreed to normalize without a Palestinian state, tells us that they are political, that they do see things. They may not be the best people, the best leaders, they are not. But they have not completely abandoned and forgotten who they are and what they stand for as Arabs, as Arab leaders. And if Trump makes an agreement with Iran as a result of this, this is going to be a huge achievement for the Arab world and for the Palestinians. And I think that one of the problems of people in the cultural resistance is that they disrespect the enemy. They don't understand how powerful Israel is. They don't get it. They are saying, why doesn't Trump stop military aid? Why doesn't Saudi Arabia demand this? They cannot be seen as open enemies of Israel. They cannot be. If they are seen as open enemies of Israel, they will be crushed. Israel has enough power in the US to potentially turn it against Saudi Arabia and portray Saudi Arabia as an enemy, which will endanger the Saudi Arabia regime and cause all kinds of troubles. Israel has immense power in Western countries, especially in the US. So the fight against it cannot be conducted using drastic sudden movements. Maybe it's going to happen when the foundations are ready, when things are already in motion. But it cannot happen at this stage. Israel is too powerful. And people need to respect that. And this is this is why I say that we have to keep in mind the bigger picture and not only focus on the pain and grief and agony of witnessing everything that's happening in Gaza. This is a long struggle against a big, mighty enemy. And I'm not saying this to make us despair. On the contrary, realizing where we are and what we're facing is going to make us better soldiers in this war. Now, another sign that things that makes me hopeful is that we can see, and we have, and this is increasing every day now, more and more of this is happening. We are seeing European, and especially in the UK, European politicians and European media talking about the genocide in ways that they have never spoken before during all these long months. In the UK, I'm seeing one item after another, maybe 10 items from just a day, calling it genocide and describing famine. Yeah, and there are problems. They silence the sound. They're not fully there. But language is changing, and it is changing. In the UK Parliament, I have seen one MP after another for 4 hours, speaking only about Palestine, and again speaking in very unequivocal terms, in very justice-oriented terms, without trying to maintain some kind of respect for Israeli propaganda. And this happened suddenly. This is like from the last week. So it could be that UK was selected to lead this change while Trump is keeping eyes on him in Saudi Arabia and making this carnival, this festival in Saudi Arabia. The UK was tasked with moving ahead, with changing the discourse globally, politically about Israel. It could be that this is what we're seeing. But it's not only the UK. Macron also said very clear things about what Israel is doing. And in the Italian parliament, we've seen also there seems to be the beginning of a momentum. And Israel has helped it a lot because Israel announced that it was going to start an onslaught on the Gaza Strip, which is going to be worse and bigger than anything until now. And I heard Netanyahu speak today, and the man is so deranged and psychopathic and disconnected completely from human life, from normalcy, completely. There isn't a grain of sanity in this man's mind. And he said, we are going to go into Gaza and we are going to exterminate Hamas. We are going to destroy them. We are going to finish them off. When he says Hamas, he means Gazans. He means everyone in Gaza. And again, in the theme of yin and yang, this new wave of statements about Israel and the genocide, it's a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing, and it's something we waited for anxiously, and we want to increase and continue. But it is also very sad at the same time, because why didn't it happen until now? We can see that people can speak, So why didn't they speak until now? And we don't know if they're actually going to do something about it and do it in time to actually save people and stop Israel. So things can be represent opposites, moral or emotional opposites at the same time. And we need to see both. We need to see both as part of the big story and the big battle that we're fighting. And I'm going to end with the last thing that makes me hopeful and also fits this pattern that I'm describing. What made me realize Israel was headed for destruction, one of the things is that I could see and recognize and acknowledge how evil and wicked Israel was. And I knew that Israel, and I know that Israel is not going to stop until it makes sure the whole world is against it. And Israel is going to force everyone, everyone, everyone. I'm telling you this, and we're going to see in a week or two or a month. Part of the reason people are being forced to speak up now is because Israel didn't stop, and it's not going to stop. Israel is so disconnected, like Netanyahu. Israel is Netanyahu. Israel is so disconnected and so unaware of how what it's doing is perceived. And it is so narcissistic and so self-indulgent and so megalomaniac and have this fanatic reassurance, self-reassurance that it's going to achieve whatever it sets out to achieve, although it never succeeded. It never happened once. Israel has been fighting the Palestinians for over 100 years. And the Palestinian cause hasn't moved an inch. On the contrary, Palestine now, 100 years ago, who heard about the Palestinians? Or in 1948, or in 1967? It began in 1967. But very few people in the 70s even knew the word Palestine or identified with it. And this movement is growing. Now there are millions and millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions of people. The entire global south is standing with Palestine. So what gives Israel this delusion that it can achieve whatever it wants using violence and force and coercion and influence? I have no idea. But I do know that they are not going to stop. And I can rely on this. And you can rely on this. This is going to bring Israel, it's going to hit the wall. And the wall kept moving back. This was what was so frustrating in the way the West was behaving. They took the wall back kilometers away. Israel should have hit the wall 20 years ago. But they kept moving the wall backwards or ahead, doesn't matter. And this tendency to always escalate and do more and always have this psychopathic lack of morality, lack of emotion, lack of authenticity, of connection. With this self-assuredness, it's going to lead Israel to a clash with the entire international community. All of them, the Republicans, the Democrats, they are going to be forced to choose. And they won't be able to choose Israel because Israel is going to do such horrific and monstrous things that no one will be able to stand with it. And I'm describing this as a positive But the negative is, until Israel hits this wall, and there's critical mass of opposition and resistance of an actual wall, so many people are going to get hurt. So many people are getting hurt. And the only way that any of this, that any death of any child and of any baby, of all the suffering, the only way that any of this has any meaning is if we take it and make it political and use it to increase our commitment to fighting the big war, because this is not going to end when Israel ends or when the genocide ends. We are going to have to keep fighting. The history is not going to end when the genocide ends. We still haven't spoken about the Congo or Sudan or so many other issues and problems. This is the big one now. This is the big one now. But all the pain that we have felt and experienced and suffered, and we will continue to suffer, we have to take it and not leave it just on the level of pain and sadness and desperation. We cannot afford desperation. This is a war we have to fight. This is a war we have to fight because there are children to save in Gaza and out of Gaza and in the Congo and in other places. And all of humanity's children, because this is not a world to bring up children in. How can anyone look their children in the eyes when this is the reality? Anyone in Canada, how can anyone look their children in the eyes or their teachers in the eyes when this is going on? So to be effective warriors, we have to keep our minds open and see the big picture and the big story and never forget what we're fighting for or how grand and crucial this battle is and our role in it. Thank you. See you in the next video.